Alhamdulillah, we're now at the opening of the Cave of Thawr, which is on top of the mountain of Thor. And this marks a pivotal part of the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and it actually contains one of the most impactful stories in the entire Seerah. So I really hope that we can show you visually what happened, and that we can also deliver the point clearly so it can truly transform you from deep within, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Now, the Prophet ﷺ lived 13 years in Mecca after prophethood, and he was going through all sorts of pain and hardship. And towards the end of the 13 years, only just a handful of people accepted Islam, something like 70 or 80 people. And despite that, they were out to unalive him. Like literally the disbelievers were out to unalive him in that moment. And subhanAllah, they went into his house, or they went close to his house, and Jibreel alayhi salam came to him and he said, "Get out, you and Abu Bakr need to leave and you need to travel to Medina." Now Medina is directly north of Mecca. If the Prophet ﷺ went north, then everyone would know his whereabouts. They'd get on their fastest horses, run after him and unalive him there and then. And there was a big bounty on his head, by the way. If you bring him dead or alive, you literally become the richest man in Mecca. Can you imagine that? So everyone was frantically looking for him. So he used his tactics to go south, to go down, which is where this mountain is, Jabal Thawr. The mountain of Thor is south of Mecca. Why did he do that? To confuse the enemy. They all know that if he was going to go anywhere, he would go to Medina, which is north. And so he went down south to this mountain and camped there for 3 days so he can confuse the enemy. As you can see, this is the opening of the cave that he stayed in. So the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr, they climbed all the way to the top of this mountain. It took us something like 40 minutes, and he climbed into this little crevice over here. And we will do a practical demonstration very soon, but let me just finish the story. And so he went into this opening of the cave and he stayed there for a while, subhanAllah, for 3 days. And so the Meccans, the Quraysh, the enemies, they were frantically looking everywhere for the Prophet ﷺ. And so they hired the most skilled people to find his whereabouts, to study the footsteps and to know where he is. And so they arrived at this mountain. They knew that he was on this mountain somewhere. And so imagine all the leaders of Quraysh, every single one of them started climbing this mountain all the way to the top looking for him. And they got to this location here. This is where all the enemies of Quraysh, they were standing looking for the Prophet ﷺ. He was literally right in this hole here in this cave. He was literally inside here. So all of the enemies standing there, all they had to do was just poke their head underneath that and they would have seen the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr. Can you imagine? They were literally at the point of death, subhanAllah. And so, as you can imagine, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he was shaking, he was shivering, and he looked to the Prophet ﷺ, and you would think that the Prophet ﷺ would be shaking and shivering, but he was actually smiling. He had a big smile on his face and his heart was filled with tranquility and peace, subhanAllah. And so Abu Bakr looked at him and the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "What's wrong with you, Abu Bakr? What's the matter with two people and the third of them is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?" And because of that tawakkul he had on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah sent forces that we could not see. A spider spun a web, as the narrations say, and a bird laid an egg literally right there at the opening. And so when the Quraysh saw this, they said there's no way they could be inside because there's a spider web, subhanAllah. And so all the enemies went, and because of a simple spider web, Allah protected the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr, and they made their way to Medina and changed the world over the next 10 years. And this story is so incredibly powerful that Allah captures it in the Qur'an. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, "Illa tansuruhu faqad nasarahu Allah." If you believers don't support the Prophet ﷺ, then know that Allah supported him. إِذْ أَخْرَجَهُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا ثَانِيَ اثْنَيْنِ إِذْ هُمَا فِي الْغَارِ إِذْ يَقُولُ لِصَاحِبِهِ لَا تَحْزَنْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that when the Prophet ﷺ looked to Abu Bakr and he said to him, "La tahzan inna Allah ma'ana." Allah is with us. Don't worry, don't be scared. Even though the enemy's there and you're facing death, don't worry, Allah is with you. And so فَأَنزَلَ اللَّهُ سَكِينَتَهُ عَلَيْهِ وَأَيَّدَهُ بِجُنُودٍ لَمْ تَرَوْهَا. So Allah sent forces that you do not see, and he supported him with forces that you could not see, and he protected them, and Allah made his word the highest and the disbelievers' word the lowest. Tayyib, what's the main lesson that we can take from this? Notice how when the Prophet ﷺ was facing death, he was literally facing death, he still had a smile on his face. He knew that he did everything he can. He went down south, there was nothing else he could do, and he just left everything to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tawakkul. This is exactly how we need to be in our affairs. We need to do everything we can in all our affairs and leave the rest to Allah. Detach from the results. If we die, if we live, if we pass, if we fail, we leave it all to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what tawakkul is. And if you live your life like that, then just as the Prophet ﷺ had a big smile on his face, you too will have a big smile on your face when you go through all the hardships, whether it's financial, whether it's social, whether it's your relationships. You will just live an amazing life. And so we take a big lesson from this, that wallahi, if you apply tawakkul in your life, you do everything you can in your ability and you leave the rest to Allah, wallahi, you will be a tranquil person, big smile on your face no matter what happens in your life. So let's go inside the cave right now so you can see what it's like. It's very, very interesting. Bismillah. Come follow me. Bismillah. So imagine they climbed under like this. Assalamu alaikum. SubhanAllah. Come. Here you can see two people just sat there, Abu Bakr and Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and they camped here for 3 days. And all the disbelievers had to do was just look under this crevice right now, and they would have seen their feet. But subhanAllah, Allah protected them, even though they were that close to catching them, and that would have ended Islam if they did catch them, subhanAllah. Look at it, it's beautiful, subhanAllah. May Allah bless you guys, and we'll leave it at that. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.